Did you know that even the most advanced cybersecurity systems can be completely useless if your physical security is weak? Imagine someone walking straight into your office, plugging into your network, and stealing sensitive data. Sounds like a nightmare, right? In this video, we will reveal the most effective physical security measures to protect your equipment, data, and staff from real-world threats. From access control to biometric locks, we'll show you how to build an impenetrable defense. Don't let your business become the next target. Watch now and secure your future. The importance of physical security measures. To begin this series of security courses, we will describe the importance of physical security measures. This serves in particular to protect the equipment, data, and the staff. Real-world threats using different methods: physical deterrence, intrusion detection, and direct response to threats. So in this course, we're going to look at the different ways to control access, to protect access, and finally, some privacy recommendations. So we start with access control. Before talking about IT security, we must first talk about physical security. You can establish the best cybersecurity strategy in the world, but if anyone can enter the site and physically connect to the network or directly to the computers, then it will be completely useless. It is therefore necessary to set up means of control at the perimeter of the company to ward off threats from the outside. Security guard. The security guard is probably the most obvious way to physically protect access because he supervises the entrances so that no one enters without permission. He monitors over the staff if the threat is internal, but also the equipment to prevent theft or sabotage. And he monitors the premises in order to check that the measures in place are respected. For example, by checking that doors and windows are securely closed. The important point with security guards is that they are often considered a very expensive way. In addition, they are human and therefore very susceptible to social engineering attacks. That is to say, they can be psychologically manipulated. It is therefore necessary to take into account the cost of their continuous training in the face of threats. Let us now move on to the means that security guards have to control access. ID badge. The ID badge is a simple way to control individuals. The badge usually has a photo and personal information, such as the employee's first and last name. And in some companies, even visitors must have a badge. The problem is that these types of badges are usually very easy to forge. This is why, for more security, it is interesting to complement the use of the badge with a list of people authorized to enter the premises. And it is the security guard who will control this access. Entry control roster. Let's now move on to the entry control panel, which is a little different from the access list, because here, the security guard comes to note who enters and who leaves, as well as the entry and exit times. So, if a security incident occurs, it will be easier to investigate the reasons for the incident. In fact, this method is above all a very good deterrent because the employees know that their entrances and exits are recorded. Security portal, mantrap. And finally, here is the security airlock, which is called a mantrap. It is simply a corridor with two doors, which is usually at the entrance of the building. The principle is that the second door can only be opened if the first one is closed, except if a security guard authorizes access. The main goal is therefore to control the flow of people in and out. Now, let's move on to the different ways to lock and unlock an access. Let's start with the most obvious of all, which is the lock. The lock was invented more than 6,000 years ago in Egypt. I find it fascinating because today, well, we still use the same mechanism. In fact, locks have been around for so long that techniques to compromise them have had time to emerge. So inevitably, we should rather consider locks and bolts as a means of delaying an intrusion and not as a totally effective protection. On this subject, and to convince you, I invite you to take a look at the Lock Noob channel on YouTube, which shows that no lock is really effective. Now let's look at the badge reader, which is a way to open an electronic lock using either a card or an RFID keychain, which is called a key fob, token-based access control. Let's now look at authentication tokens. It is a method of access control under tokenized identification. So, it is not a real physical token, but a code composed of several digits, which has the particularity of changing over time, for example, every minute. These codes, which change regularly, are so-called pseudo-random codes. If you know their initialization variables, you can reproduce the code sequence on two devices, and thus check that the person who entered the code is the right person. There are several ways to generate these codes. For example, there was a time when we used a small keychain with a screen that displayed this famous code, which changed regularly. But today, we use mobile applications such as Google Authenticator, and it is even possible to receive this code either by SMS or email in order to authenticate yourself. Biometric locks. Now, let's move on to biometric locks, which are devices that also allow access control, but using a person's physical attributes such as fingerprints, iris recognition, or voice recognition to authenticate an individual. These physical attributes are, in theory, impossible to change because they are unique to each individual. Hardware locks. Now, let's move on to the type of locks designed for hardware. They are usually intended to protect equipment, such as the cable lock that helps secure a laptop against theft. In general, each laptop has a reinforced cavity in which a lock can be inserted. But be careful, because this type of lock usually has a very thin cable, which is very easy to cut. In the same vein, we also have locks to protect the servers. These types of locks generally combine the use of a physical key, a biometric system, or a PIN code. There are also USB locks, which are small plugs inserted into USB ports in order to make them unusable. Because you should know that a USB socket can be a point of attack for a person with bad intentions. That is to say, he could, for example, connect a keylogger or even a USB flash, which would install malicious applications. These plugs are inserted using a key of their own, and this key can also be used to remove them. Usually, this key comes with multiple caps. And to finish this course, we're going to talk about the privacy filter, which is a film that we add to the screens in order to reduce the angle of view. Yes, because we often underestimate the effectiveness of this social engineering technique that is simply called looking over the shoulder. Because this type of attack does not require any computer skills to take a look at a user's screen and pick up sensitive information, such as usernames, passwords, or even confidential data. This privacy filter therefore reduces this risk, especially if you use your computer in public places.